Thank you for joining us today. My name is Rose Malinowski, and I serve as the chair of the Social Work Field Directors Network in Illinois. Today I'm very privileged to have some guests with me, and we're going to address the very serious topic of human trafficking. It's an issue that affects individuals, families, communities around the world, and also in our own backyards. So we're going to spend some time today learning about what human trafficking is, hearing a story of a survivor, and then looking at the legal aspects, some of the service options, and I think most importantly of all, we're going to be talking about and learning about how we can respond to human trafficking, to raise awareness and to end human trafficking. So again, thank you for joining us, and we're going to start today hearing from Brenda Myers-Powell and Jody Raphael. Brenda Myers-Powell is a co-founder of the Dreamcatchers Foundation. She is on the board of Women of Power and a 25-year survivor of sex trafficking, and currently works with the Sheriff's Department of Cook County. And Jody Raphael is a law professor and a researcher here at DePaul University. So, Jody and Brenda, if you would share with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Brenda, your story is very long and complex. So let me just begin by asking you to describe your childhood. I know that you were raised by an alcoholic grandmother, but what happened during your upbringing that you think contributed to your choice of going into the sex trade industry at a very young age?
There are a lot of things that came together in my life that pointed me towards the sex industry, but the most difficult thing that happened to me, I started being molested at the early age of 4 years old, as I can remember. It may have been happening earlier than that, but at the early age of 4 years old was my first molestation that I remember. It happened throughout my childhood. It was something that was kind of happening quite a bit to me, and I pushed all those feelings down as a child. And I remember at the early age of 9 years old, living in a neighborhood where prostitutes frequented, and asking my grandmother what the women were doing, and they looked different. They were shiny, they had the dresses, and they looked like I wanted to feel like I always wanted to be a shiny little girl. I wanted to be the Supremes, I had those dreams and things like that, but because of what was going on with me, the molestation, I felt bad on the inside. But I remember identifying with those women on the corner, and I used to look at them, and they looked real shiny, and I asked what they were doing, and my grandmother told me that they were taking their panties off, and men were giving them money. And I could identify what that scenario, men had been taking my panties off. And I was like, wow, I'll probably do that one day. That's how I looked at it, Jody. I looked at it as something that was bound to happen to me because it seemed to be so normal that these other things were happening to me. And as I got older, of course, the low self-esteem and the promiscuous that was now in my life, I started seeing in our community where the movies that I was looking at that time were like black exploitation movies, and it seemed like the women who were prostituting, or the women who were using their bodies sexually, were making all the money. And I thought that I could get out the neighborhood, I could make a success of myself, or I would meet Prince Charming, or I would some way get out of my lifestyle, out of the life I was living, and get into a better life if I could use my body. I had read Hustler magazine. I read what Larry, Xavier Hollander calling a happy hooker. I remember looking at the movies. Every time you looked at the movies, there's always a prostitute who was smiling and she was happy and she's successful. So these type of things were kind of gave me the foundation.
So we have sexual assault. We have very low self-esteem. We have mental abuse from the alcoholic grandmother.
And we have the media playing a very big part in it.
And
too.
the media, yeah. And so basically, it's seeing your classic situation, I think, for most young girls who end up in prostitution is your body is the asset that's going to get
Exactly.
you out of all of this. So,
And it's the same message that the videos and the rap culture is giving young ladies today, you know, or just media period. When they sell young ladies on, they focus on girls' body parts to even sell something as simple as soap or toothpaste. It's always about a woman's body part. It's about how good she looks, about how pretty she is. It always seems to sell the product, but our young girls are looking at this, and their value is only worth what?
so at what age did you begin selling your body?
At the early age of 14 years
14?
old. 14 years old. I was a child prostitute. At that age, I had 2 kids from neighborhood boys, and I remember very, very well when I started prostituting in Chicago, in front of the Mark Twain Hotel, at the early age of 14. And the Johns knew that I was young. In fact, that's what attracted them to me, my youth, my being so young, and I got paid very well because I was so young.
Now, how did you? But I view you as a trafficked or a victim of pimp control prostitution. So how did you
That
become
happened
involved?
immediately.
Immediately. Why is-
Immediately, because I mean, in the 70s, well, I went down there in order to make money for me and my 2 kids. We didn't have money. It was a real hard time for our family, and my intention was to go down there, make some money, because I knew other girls in the neighborhood who were doing it, and to make the money and help my kids out and my grandmother. I was down there, I mean, maybe been my 2nd or 3rd time working on that street when 2 pimps kidnapped me. They hit me over the head, threw me in the trunk of a car, and they took me to what I know now is Indiana, Iowa, but they worked the truck stops. I had to work the truck stops for these 2 pimps. And I was with them for over like 6 months, being threatened, it's a brainwash, being humiliated, just the whole, what they call, pimps call seasoning. And that seasoning means that they were turning me out and seasoning me to be with them, and a lot of it was through fear. I was real scared. I was afraid to move. I was afraid to leave, but I really wanted to go, and I wasn't able to escape for like 6 or 7 months until they got another girl. And when they got another girl, that's when they started paying more attention to her, and they didn't pay as much attention to me, and I was able to escape.
But you had other pimps that you became involved with other pimps?
Yes.
After this? Why?
Of course.
Why is that?
Well, after that particular incident, I went back home, and I don't know. I wanted to get a job, and I wanted to do the right thing, but it didn't seem comfortable anymore to be who I was. I was no longer a little girl. I was no longer the girl that I was after that. And I remember trying to still prostitute to make the money, because I still believed that this could make money, and because it was a lot of money, and it was attractive. The money was attractive if I could just make it for myself. But being on the streets, I found out that it didn't happen like that. And what I eventually got into, I got with another pimp who was brutal. But I had to choose this pimp in order to keep the other pimps from robbing me, taking my money, and this kidnapping happening again. And I was coerced into it by one of his girls. She met me in jail. She took me home with her, and I got with this pimp. I didn't stay with him because I found out that I could, since I was a pretty girl, and that I could get into some escort. I could get into the massage parlors. I could do something else in which I thought that way I'd be independent and I could make my own money. And I found out that it wasn't like that, because after I got into the escort services, and I got, my first one was a strip club. And I worked at the strip club, and I found out that the strip club owners were just as big as the pimps were. Being in the strip club and dancing and thinking that I was actually going to make my money by table dances and my tips, and found out that that's not the way the money was made. And in order to make the money, I had to get into the family of the club. which was ran by the boss at the strip club, and you get 50% of everything that you make to the club, which is the boss, you know. I mean, all your needs are met there. I mean, everything from my costumes cleaned, to my food, to my cocaine, to anything that I wanted access to, the club would supply it.
So you mentioned cocaine. So drugs became a part of the
Not for me at that
routine,
time.
not for you?
Not for me at that time. I was I prostituted for almost 12 or 13 years before I did drugs. Drugs
What
were
led
not
to the drugs? I bet you weren't able to keep doing it without the drugs.
You wake up one day and you can't go into another room without a drink. You may start off with a little drink, and I did. I started drinking at the club or drinking before I go on an escort, and then I realized that I had to have a drink to get the courage, because let me say, prostitution comes with violence. It comes with slapping, it comes with pinching, it comes with being beat up, it comes with being raped, and you get intimidated. You get afraid to go into the next room with the next John, because you don't know, you can't comfortably do the service now, because if you got beat up the night before, well, now you're paranoid, but you have to keep working. And I would go into, I'd have to take a drink now. Okay, a drink would kind of relax me. And then I started drinking with the customers, which made me too loose. And it was not allowed to be drunk or to be intoxicated and handle your business. And I had to stop drinking. So I got introduced into marijuana. Now through the whole thing, I'm taking diet pills, because you got to stay slim and you got to stay pretty. All right, I'm already on uppers every day. I'm on diet pills, prescription diet pills, because it was real easy to get prescription diet pills, and I was on these prescription pills to stay, my size and to continue to stay slim, to attract the men and to strip. And then I'm taking the alcohol and the marijuana, and that was my first means of survival. My first, escape from the lifestyle. With drugs, trying to deal with that lifestyle, trying to stay sane, Jody, trying to keep my head together and still do my job.
But that's the typical downward spiral.
It
when
is.
you stay in the business.
It is.
Now I would like for you to tell about your what I call your rescue. The night that you, after 25 years?
25 years of prostitution. I have been shot 5 times. I have been stabbed over 13 times. I have been beat unconscious. I have been kidnapped. I have been a slave.
But you're trapped. You're really trapped in this lifestyle. I mean,
trapped in the lifestyle.
You are. What's keeping you in this lifestyle? When all of these things are happening to you, of course you're not. You're drugging and doping yourself, so you're not exactly thinking straight.
Well, let's talk about even before the drugging and the doping.
What traps you in this?
The brainwashing.
Yeah.
The manipulation, the coercion, the things that the Johns and the pimps do to make you feel that that is all you can ever do in life. We know you got the statements saying that once a hoe, always a hoe, or a girl can never go to being a straight woman after she's prostituted, or you're used goods. No one will ever want you once you have that lifestyle. Well, these are the things that are put into your head every day by the people who are selling you, who are making a profit off of you, to let you know that this is what you do well, you'll never do anything else. This is never going to change for you, and this is part of the life. And everybody's not meant to do this, but you are. Yeah. And every day, and then the pimps tell you that you're basically nothing, and without them, you would be nothing. And when I say the pimps, I'm not just talking about the ones you think about, the street pimps or whatever. I'm talking about businessmen who call the girls into the office and would have regular meetings with us and tell us how lucky they are and how grateful we should be for them to have a place for us to strip or to have an escort. And we had rules and regulations that we had to go by. So you're always told that you couldn't make it without these entities. and that you are basically should be grateful. And this is the reason that you should be dedicated, you should be loyal, and you should stay in line, and you should stay in your place. Okay, because society will never accept you again the way you are. So you begin to have this almost hatred toward society, toward the system, toward normal people, because you want to be normal, but you can't, because they've already told you that you can never be accepted. And then when you go to normal places, you feel different. People look at you different.
Yeah, the night that you went to the hospital, the night that you went in the car with them, was a Mercedes-Benz? Because that illustrates your point. And this man paid you, and then wanted his money back, right?
He wanted his money back. He was a white guy, a very well-dressed white man, who came into an African-American community, and he was driving around, and he picked me up. We dated in daylight, in broad daylight. We had a car date. He paid me the money. After we got through, he started hitting me and told me to give him his money back. I started fighting him back, and he was a man, and he was hitting me very hard, and I was trying to get out the door. As I'm trying to get out the door, he starts his car up, and he starts driving. I jumped out the car, but my clothes caught hold to the car door, and he drugged me for 6 blocks. After dragging me, he tore all the skin. The concrete tore all the skin off my face, and this on this side of my body.
In your eye when you were.
I almost lost my eye.
Yeah. So you come to the county hospital, Stroger.
I went to Stroger Hospital. I was taken to Stroger Hospital by some guys from the community, because I had no idea how messed up I was. I didn't realize that I was that messed up, because at that time I was on drugs.
Yeah, but then they called the police. Police officer shows up.
I showed
right?
up in the county hospital.
Yeah.
They rushed me into the emergency room like this is a woman that's been hurt. Let's help her, you know, like an emergency.
Like a regular person, right?
Should be done. A police officer who noticed and knew me from the street said, pulled the curtain together and told the nurse that was in charge, said, she's a hooker. I know her. She probably robbed somebody and she got what she deserved. She's just a prostitute. I was pushed back out into the hallway after that. And I remember thinking, they're not going to wait on me, because he told them that I was a prostitute. And I laid there on the gurney until the shift changed. When the shift changed, a doctor came with my record or whatever, you know, with the little manila folder, and she says, "How long have you been here?" And by that time I was laying there, and I had kind of basically decided that they were going to let me die there. And she said, "This is unacceptable." She made a big deal about it. They took care of me. I ended up staying in the hospital for a week.
And you could not go back on the streets. That was
I was
really,
disfigured.
You could not go back on the streets.
Honestly,
so,
Jody, if I could have, I would have.
But you couldn't.
I couldn't, and I was disfigured.
You had hit rock bottom.
I was disfigured. There was no one was going to do anything. I was totally
But some
ugly.
doctor called this special place for you.
What she did was, she did something that she cared. And she sat there during the week I was there, and she would just come and talk to me. And she asked me to go see social services before I left, which didn't mean anything to me. I saw social services before in the hospital. I know what they did, nothing. But she made a call to social services and told them that they needed to help me. And I went down there and I talked to social service, and they didn't have a clue to do with me. They didn't have a clue what to do with me. I was a prostitute. That was evident. They didn't know what to do with a prostitute. Maybe if there was something else going on there, but I don't know anything to do with you. But I remembered about a place that used to come and outreach workers used to tell me about. And I told the social worker. I told the social worker about the place.
About this place.
They called it. They gave me a one-way bus pass to get there. And I remember getting on the bus and looking like a mummy.
You're all wrapped up.
All wrapped up, taped up, and bandaged up, and not walking very well either because all of this was all messed up.
But this
and
place, you were able to stay there for some time, and
I was able to stay there for over a year and a half.
yeah,
It took a
and they
year and a
have
half.
to restore you back to kind of get back to life, to regular
Exactly.
life. Yeah. And now you are helping other girls and women go through that same process, but hopefully not taking 25 years to do that. Now, so right now you are working with the Cook County Sheriff's Department, and when they go out and do stings and they find a 13 or 14-year-old girl in a hotel room, the sheriff's deputies are pretending to be customers. They're responding to internet ads and so on.
Exactly.
Then they summon you on the pager or the telephone to go out and to try to do an intervention with the girl. Now we have, under our special new Illinois law, these girls under 18 cannot be arrested for a prostitution-related offense.
Exactly.
We view them now as victims, but that means we still have to respond to their plight. So what are you finding? A lot of these girls are pimp controlled, right? And they're brought to these hotel rooms by the pimps, and it's difficult to pry them away from the pimps and the mindset that they have. Can you talk a little bit about what that process is? I know you had a case where you had a young girl, and you actually helped rescue her, and took her to a drug treatment facility or a shelter and got her away from the pimp. But the next day she went back, right back, and I said, Brenda, I was just kidding around, but I said, Brenda, what happened? And you said, Jody, I had only 2 hours with her, and she's had 6 months with this pimp.
Right.
But can you say a little more about this?
Well, once we get the young ladies, there's codes that are, okay, recently we arrested a young lady off a Backpage website, and when we arrested her, there were rules and regulations that she had, just as if you get a contract from a regular job. And just like you get a policy and procedures from a job, she had policies and procedures for prostitution that she had to go by. This is how organized it is when you're talking about prostitution and you're talking about the pimps. And when you're talking about the pimps, I don't want you to look at, and Jody, we don't want you to look at pimps as being the guy with the green feather in his hat or some cartoon-looking character. I want you to talk about professional people. I want you to look at them being women. I want you to look at the extent that they have to go through in order to keep the confidence and loyalty. So if she's with them for a year or to 6 months, and they're every day, they're putting their laws and their regulations into them. They're telling them what they like and they don't like. They're letting them know how it goes, and with a little fear, but also with that brand of saying that I'm the best thing that you got going. And you don't know what background this kid came from. Whatever background came, it forced them into prostitution. It was a door that they had to go through in order to get to where they are. So now, wherever they came from may seem okay or a lot better than where they were. Now, here I am. I go in and say, how can I help you stop this? What do you mean? I didn't say I wanted to stop. Or who says I wanted to stop? This is working okay. Sure, I get beat up sometime. Sure, I go to jail sometime. But it's better than what was going on with me before I got here. I eat every day. I get nice clothes, sometimes the perpetrator to the person is nice to them. It depends on how much money they make. And if I make a lot of money, I'm his girl.
Yeah, so we have a romantic interest.
We got an interest there because he's showing her affection because she makes the money. And to her, all I have to do is make him happy and he'll make me happy. This is easier than being... See, because we get young ladies who, first of all, the people who were supposed to rescue them have already let them down. I'm talking about the parents. I'm talking about the school system. I'm talking about social services. I'm talking about all the entities that were supposed to be there in place to keep her from getting into prostitution, failed her at some point. So now we've got to bring her back out, and we've got to deprogram her. Deprogram all these things. It's almost like a prisoner of war or being a part of you know, Afghanistan and brainwashed. You know, it's just that horrible and that deep, the mindset that these young girls have when they're coerced into prostitution. And listen, at the early age, they recruit. They recruit as early as 12 years old. That's at a time when you can, anything that you put inside of a child is going to be who they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is not a group that's crying out to be rescued necessarily.
No. I mean, we have a certain, I mean, there are young ladies who are drug addicted, who want to get off the drugs, but just because they want to get out the drugs don't mean they want to stop prostituting. Because this has been a ways of survival. This has been a means and ways of them getting their money. And if I don't have an education, the average age of education was like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. This is how early they started prostituting. There's no thinking about GED or
what you're
anything
saying,
like that.
But these girls are being controlled really by somebody else, by the people that they're making the profit
There's
for.
not
And
a
so
woman
it's-
that is not involved in prostitution who doesn't have to pay somebody in order to exist in that game, in that business, okay? Whether it is I give 50 to 40, if I give 40 or 50% to my escort service or the strip club owner, or I do, even if I'm working as a phone sex, I'm still giving a cut of this money. I only get a percentage of this money.
Yes, and you're being controlled by these.
You're being controlled. There
these
are
people.
rules and regulations. This game by these
the reason I'm
rules.
asking this because basically it's your story over and over and over
And
again.
over
It's
again.
the early childhood sexual assault and the dysfunctional family, running away, all of those things, and
Wait a
then
minute.
meeting the controller.
Not always. We have young ladies who come from the suburbs, Jody.
Mhm.
We have young ladies who come from well-to-do families and who prostitute. What do you say about those? But what I say about those young ladies is there is some type of, now that's when I feel that mental health issues, there are issues that are standing there because even in the best of homes, things
Oh,
happen.
sure, but these are damaged. They have been somehow abused or
There's
or
a damage
damaged.
there.
Yes.
There's damage there, but it's just
Because
not from you. We know that predominantly most of our women come from poor families,
Yeah.
but our women are more and more coming from middle class families
Yeah.
and coming
But
from
the traffickers will prey on
Exactly.
they will prey on the vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
These are, of course, all
Traffickers
teens.
are looking different too. They can be the
Yes.
boyfriends.
Yes.
They can start off being, who have a great idea. Because now with the internet,
Mhm.
every kid who thinks they have a great idea, who may get the wrong idea, is trying out prostitution. They're posting, their girlfriends are saying, hey, I did it myself, let me post you. Now the girlfriend becomes her girlfriend's pimps. You know what I'm saying? Her little crew becomes, now she's pimping all her little friends because she's posting them on the internet and she's getting her percentage. I mean, they're coming out the woodwork and they're coming from our best families. They're coming from our good families. People who would not even understand, how did my daughter get in contact? How did she get hooked up like this? We are living in a world where girls are thinking so much about their body images and what
that's
money
what
can
it
do
is.
for them and how fast money is going to get them somewhere. And it's almost like an epidemic.
Yeah. No, I think
Brenda, if there were one thing you want us to take away from all that you're sharing with us today, what would you want us to know?
Every time I talk about this issue, people ask me, there are so many things you can get from what I'm saying.
Oh, yes.
There are so many things. First of all, about the early intervention that needs to be done with young girls when there is a problem with, if you see the family structure failing, or there's a chance she's been abused or molestation is going on, there's an intervention that can be done right there. There is also the demand side. I mean, how do we curb this? Because without demand, there would be no supply. How do we curb the demand side of prostitution? And then that we want people to understand that prostitution is not a certain group of people's problem. It's everybody's problem. Our children are being exploited into prostitution, in great numbers now. Domestically, trafficked right here in America by leaps and bounds, and it's happening in our own back doors, and we don't see it because we don't identify it with being the same thing. You know, when people think of trafficking, they think there has to be violence or all this type of things happening. It doesn't have to be, that doesn't have to be involved in it. There's so many things. And one thing that you can also look at, the main thing is that we don't have the services that we need in order to rescue these girls once we find that there is a problem. Because if we had the services in place, we could save more girls. It took a village to raise me again. Just like they say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, the village had to come back and re-raise me. All we need is that community to get back in place for these young girls to go back where they missed what happened. Okay, mental health, trauma services, therapy, a place to stay. We have a million different places out here to say that we're doing this and we're doing that, but no one's dealing with the basic need, Jody, and you know what the basic need is. Housing, because until I make her feel safe, I can't start taking her, you know, back to any type of normalization. She can't get normal until she's safe.
Right.
And if I've got to go somewhere, if a place is open from 9 to 5,
Right, exactly, exactly.
most prostitutes don't get up, Jody, from 9 to 5.
I remember you
Okay.
talking one day, and I wrote this down, we'll remember it forever. You said the most important things are caring, as you said today, hospitality.
Hospitality, nurturing, and rebuilding.
Yeah.
It's 3 simple things.
Yeah.
3 simple things in order for us to go back and regain these ladies to help them to become productive, beautiful citizens like they can be. Let me say something to this. The whole time I was in prostitution, I used to always look at ladies like you ladies, and I did not like you. And the reason I didn't like you is because I wanted to be just like you.
But you couldn't, but you knew you never could, yes.
I
So
wanted the house.
we create this, but that's what happens in the downward spiral.
The
We
downward
create these
spiral.
these outlaws that
Right.
are really, that are
So-
very hard to get them back
Exactly.
from that
So
status.
how does our community embrace those ladies
But
again?
the one thing that I always take from you is that our culture is just kind of run amok with this. And
Exactly.
Yes,
And you see it in the way these young girls are exploited, but that it's somehow all right for a grown man to pay for sex with a 12 or 13-year-old.
We
So our
exploit our girls
culture
every day.
is just that's today's sex trade industry, and so that has to be everybody's problem. Even if you don't have any young girls of your own at home, it has to be all of our problem.
It
yes.
does.
Thank you
Thank
both
you.
very, very much.